welcome everybody to MogTalk episode 214. Today is January 2nd, 2021. So congratulations everybody watching the show. You are here in a new year that hopefully won't be as much of a garbage fire as last. If you're unfamiliar with MogTalk, is a show based around the Final Fantasy XIV community discussing everything from Savage Raiding to Chocobo Racing, as we proved last week. Before we go too much into this show, though, I do want you guys to know who's on the show. We are going to be talking about the state of Melee, so we brought on 3 players. I think that would host a pretty decent conversation about that. And I'm going to go clockwise here. I'm going to start with Sheenda. Sheenda, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Sheenda. I have been playing Ninja since Gordius, and I've helped with the theory crafting for the openers and rotations of it, both in Stormblood and Shadowbringers. But I've been playing pretty much all the melees here and there.
Okay. I said Sheenda. I don't know why I like it.
I feel like we should just keep changing the name.
Yeah,
like,
do whatever.
Variations.
Sheenda. Your picture's very great, man. I think that it's a very good Final Fantasy XIV community picture there.
It is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. And then Llama, if you don't mind going.
Well, I'm a ninja main. I also have tanked Savage as well. I've been playing since 1.0, and I guess I spend most of my time just helping new raiders learn Savage content.
Okay, there you go. And finally, and least, Zheph.
Yes, I'm Zheph. I am a tank main, but I spend the better part of my time trying to play every single job, except for Red Mage, in the game. So that covers all the melees as well.
So
I spend a lot of time on those.
Why not Red Mage?
I never get around to it.
Oh, okay. Isn't like a hate? I know. At least from one New Zealander, they particular hate.
No, it doesn't have enough appeal to me to cause me to bother leveling it up.
Okay. Every other job, sure, but not Red Mage. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We are going to be discussing, of course, the state of Melee. I figured we'd bring on 3 awesome guests for this show. After the patch 5.4, there was some changes to Melee, at least one in particular for sure that a lot of people are talking about, which is Monk. So I figured we'd go ahead and start this conversation off by discussing what you think of the changes of Monk. And anyone who wants to grab this one, go ahead and just tell me what your thoughts are on Monk and the changes.
Well, I think I can start.
Yeah.
I've been playing Monk. I actually leveled Monk and started playing it before the changes, after the changes were announced, specifically because I wanted to be able to compare it with a before and after. And so I've been playing it, obviously, the past couple of days just to get more used to it. And I can definitely say the biggest part of the changes was quality of life improvements. Just a whole lot of things that just do away with the annoying little things that you had to do on Monk. So now you basically at the end of the day, it feels like you're playing the same job. It still sort of plays the same, but it's just without the annoyances that it had before, I would say.
Okay, so you would for sure say what they changed was annoyances, not things that made it, maybe things that were making it artificially difficult. There wasn't actually enjoyable content or enjoyable skills to have to get better at Monk.
It was mostly downtime stuff, but another one of the big changes was, which I'm personally in favor of, was the rework for Riddle of Earth. So the way it was before was, if you press Riddle of Earth and you took damage, within, if I'm remembering correctly, you had a 30-second window to take damage.
Yes.
And if you did, you would then have Earth's Reply, a buff which meant you didn't have to hit your positionals for 30 whole seconds. And that sounds good, but I think it undermines the purpose of Monk a little bit, which is a job that's all about hitting your positionals. And so it kind of feels like it goes against the job. It takes away from the fun if you hit this one button, you take damage, and then you basically don't have to play half the job for 30 seconds. And so the way they changed it is now it's basically a mini True North, where you have 3 refreshing charges of it, up to 3 charges that refresh over time. And they only last 6 seconds. So you have to be a lot more selective about how you use it now. but I think it's a lot better this way than it was before.
Okay. Llama, Sheen, do you guys agree that it's better in the state it is now?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I asked the monk in our static, and that's pretty much
Mhm.
Zeph said the same thing that
Okay.
he was going on. It's the quality of life changes.
Okay.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's a big thing for Monk to be doing the positionals because they have it on every single skill, whereas every other melee it only has it on a few skills here and there. So the fact that you didn't really have to think about it kind of took out an entire part of what Monk is, whereas now you have to like, think a little bit about it,
hmm
which is nice.
So, I mean, that's interesting to hear because I know a lot of people were complaining because they were like, "Oh, now Monk's brain dead," or they were saying that it was stupid, because it just oversimplifies the job. But you definitely don't really think that's the case.
I don't think it oversimplifies the job. In fact, like other parts of the job got simpler, but I think this part definitely got harder just because you're actually thinking about it more than like 15 seconds every minute.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think it was.
go ahead.
Oh, it was. What was it before? It was something like 75% uptime of free positionals if you
Yeah,
procced
because you
Earth
had
Reply and used your True Norths on cooldown,
yeah.
which is pretty ridiculous.
Hmm. Okay. I mean, I thought this was going to be a little bit more of like, no, this sucks. Oh, no, this is dumb. Because I know back in the
I
day,
mean,
like, changes like Dark Knight, when it
Mhm.
was changed, it used to be like the skill job, the skill tank, right? And
Yeah.
then they got changed into a fairly simple concept compared to what it was in original state in Heaven's Ward. And a lot of people were complaining about that. And I felt like that was the same thing that people were comparing to for Monk, but I guess no, people are just tired of dealing with what Monk was doing.
yeah. Though to be fair, some of the other changes it had kind of goes in the more like dislike direction. I feel. I think the positional change was very nice though.
Okay. So did it affect the state of Melee at all and the balance between all of the different jobs? Or is it pretty much the same as it was before?
Well, I was looking at monk logs earlier today. I was looking at the rankings, and specifically for E9, monk is way down in the rankings compared to the other DPS because, and now that I've tried it myself, it is actually really hard to hit all your positionals and keep good uptime. Part of it is due to monk being all of its burst is on the 90 seconds, and the mechanics in that fight are also on 90 seconds that really screws with your rotation. So that combined with having difficulty hitting your positionals on a boss where you're constantly running around
Right.
it, you might not have control over which way it's facing, and it does a whole lot of turning on its own, can be really difficult. And I think, but I also think that's potentially a good thing. It remains to be seen because it means that it might be possible for people that really work hard at it to do just as good, if not better than the other melees, if they
Yeah.
really master that fight. So I think that could be a good challenge. So it might not be a bad thing.
The way I feel that Monk is now in terms of positionals is similar to how you have to cater to Black Mage movement sometimes. You just have to cater to Monk positionals sometimes.
Okay. So this is going to kind of go off on a small tangent here, but it's something that I think about every once in a while when I'm doing raids. That a lot of mechanics and a lot of fights are designed to kind of work with cooldown rotations.
Mm-hmm.
But I noticed that I don't know how heavy you guys have hit the tier. If you've found that there are certain ways that you just can't keep those rotations and you're gonna have to hold, or it kind of screws with how you would normally think your rotation should go. Have you seen a lot of that with this tier where you're just
Um,
rotations are fucked?
not really, except Emerald Weapon. Fuck that fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an extreme trial. They're always wacky.
Yeah, I have to do an early trick for that.
Mhm.
But with 12, our static actually holds our raid buffs until obliteration after the first Shiva phase in phase 1. It makes it really comfy.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
definitely a lot comfier. They
Mhm.
don't like it's technically I believe less optimal to do it that way just because you lose the usage, but it's so much easier. Like the
It
amount of
is.
times that my group died to trying to do damage during Shiva and then during Lion's phase.
Tenshi-gen during Shiva.
Yeah,
God.
Okay.
it's so rough, but yeah, there's definitely ways you can do it to make it a lot easier without really losing very much, just because everybody can do damage inside those windows rather than only half the group really doing damage.
Okay. So there's not a lot of moments so far, at least in the raid tier, where you have to kind of goof up and do some theory craft with how your rotation is going to go. Is pretty clean.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, at least on Monk in E9, there I did have to ask myself the question of whether it was worth holding my burst for after a difficult mechanic to work around, but it seems like at the end of the day, you can pretty much play it close to well enough to warrant using it on cooldown anyway. I think the only argument you could make against that is if you know the kill time ahead of time and you wouldn't lose a use, then maybe you can go for a more convenient timing on execution. But
right.
I don't really know for sure because I haven't had any predictable kill time in my
Yeah.
experience yet.
Like, because actually my group speed ran 9 this past week, so but it's just so hard to really move stuff around in that fight because there's just a bunch of things happening at all times. But you only really lose a GCD here or there ever for things, I feel, when you're
It's
doing
usually
things
at worst
optimally.
only one, so it's not the end of the world if you're just losing one GCD.
Yeah, like anti-air,
Yeah.
I think. Like those mechanics.
You can definitely keep
favorites.
uptime, but it's very scary.
Yeah, as a paladin, I feel pretty bad about anti-air because I just try to time.
Oh,
up
don't
my-
worry, I played Paladin in Prog. I know the joys.
Like, well, it really doesn't. The strat doesn't really hurt me that much. You lose some autos, but I think that we're not going to talk about E9S. Sorry, I'm already having like flashback.
Flashbacks, yeah.
Just like, oh my god. So, anyways, with the reason I brought that up, and I'm calling it kind of a tangent, is because I was thinking about this. Would you prefer, and I don't know this because I don't play Melee as much, would you prefer it that you have to be kind of creative with your rotation when you go into fights, and it's not on this clean, like, rotation list where it will always work out for you?
I
Personally,
am
yes.
so tired of dummy fights.
Okay.
Yes, I like it when you have to get creative because then you get to see how different people approach different fights, and then it's not just straightforward learn your rotation and then hit the boss. It's actually learning how to play the fight as well.
Right.
And I think that gives a fight more longevity when it's harder to get good at it. With dummy fights, once you've learnt your rotation and you can execute it perfectly, then from there it's just fishing for a good run from that point on. I think it's more enjoyable when it's not so easy to get that perfect run.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of Melee early on complained about a fight like E6S, probably because they dealt with maybe some tanks that just played ping pong with the bosses. But that was actually fun for me as Melee, like just trying to navigate through that. And
That
doing
was
some
a fight.
optimization.
Oh, go on.
Go ahead. No,
Yeah, that was a fight where the tanks had to work with the melee. So it wasn't just
yes.
it wasn't necessarily the fault of the melees. It was something where the tanks had to work with the melees. And so I think it's a good idea for tank players if they have the time to actually get some experience on melee so they can understand the needs of a melee better to improve their tanking so they can work with them better.
I mean, would you say that tanks really even need to play melee? Don't they really more just need to understand not move the boss as much and try to keep consistent movement?
It's helped me out going from ninja back to warrior because I understand positionals and just keeping the boss still and just minimizing like the movement, especially in a fight like 6 or something. It definitely helps you become a better tank and vice versa, I think.
Yeah, because I played tank more before I picked up melee seriously, and it wasn't until because there's always sort of the mentality of always face north, and there's also an expectation that the tank will face north. But then once I started playing melee, even though I knew exactly which way the tank was going to turn the boss, sometimes there's just a positional that is RNG, whether you're going to hit it because the boss happens to be turning the same instant that you need to hit the GCD. And so it's, I would say, almost always better if the tank just keeps it still. Like whichever way it ends up facing after a mechanic, you just leave it like that. And I think that's something that maybe a lot of people don't realize until they've actually tried melee for themselves, and they realize that
Absolutely.
you can't always just you don't always have true north, and you don't want to have to use true north on something that is preventable like that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen tanks turn Cloud of Darkness, of course, your favorite fight, E9S, after anti-air, instead of like just dragging it back down south and just keeping it there, like they rotate it back around. And I know that there's like a trick attack window there. I'm like, please just.
I face it north every time. Now I'm gonna tell you, the thing is, my mindset's always like, how can I get this to be so simple the people in the party can't fuck up? Right?
Yeah.
That's all I'm thinking. I'm not thinking about DPS uptime. I'm thinking about them executing the mechanics.
Right.
And so I'm always just facing the boss true north and doing all the mechanics true north, because I feel, at least, the people in Party Finder, if they're just coming in and they have no clue what they're doing and they're kind of just confused and out of it, they can at least kind of, if it's consistent with where the markers are and everything else, then maybe they won't mess it up.
Yeah, for Party Finder, I definitely agree that that's better, because like you'll never really do optimal damage in Party Finder anyways, just because strats are generally very different.
Mm-hmm.
So like whatever there is to make it consistent is just better 100% of the time.
Yeah, I do agree that if you're in a group that has people who know what they're doing and they can kind of understand and adapt a little bit better, the least amount of movement you can offer is the best thing you can do for your melee.
Yeah,
That's what
absolutely.
I would assume, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that does really kind of go into, you know what? Let's go ahead and talk about the positionals, because we're already kind of talking about it a little bit. So, in your opinion, are positionals fun?
Yes.
Yeah?
I think that's the whole point of melee in Final Fantasy and that's what makes it unique.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah.
you're playing this. Well, first of all, if you look at all the jobs, they all have their unique quirks. So casters have to work around positioning themselves properly and minimizing movement and that sort of thing. Melees pretty much have free movement wherever they want. So their little quirk is that they have to be on certain spots of the boss at certain times to do the most damage, and I think that's interesting. And that's also why I have the opinion that Monk should not have had the old Riddle of Earth, which gave you free positionals, because it just takes away from the experience. Because then you just sit in one spot, hitting your buttons 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, etc.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Makes you think about your true north uses throughout the fight. You kind of have to plan ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I, in my experience playing melee, I'm always just, I feel like I'm having a hard time just keeping up with Party Finder or Dungeon, tanks and everything else, and I just assume, I'm going to try my best, but they're fucking jumping and spinning half the time that I'm in any group. So it's never really any fun for me because I'm not playing high level, I guess. But I guess if they took it away, would that just pretty much make it too brain dead and melee would just not be as much fun to play?
I think it would be like at that point you're just a range job that has to stand in melee. So like you're just
Right.
Yeah.
a melee
agree.
range, a melee
And
range.
range jobs-
Like that's just weird.
Ranged can already just stand in melee. Like, they don't have to
Yeah.
go away from the boss. You can give a ranged melee spot, and then it would be functionally the exact same.
But you can't
I would
give a
encourage-
melee a range spot, really. I mean,
Yeah.
you can, but
Unless they're a ninja, then you sometimes can get away with doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would also argue if you take away positionals from melees, that makes the tank's job a lot more boring as well. Because then
Yeah.
they don't have there is no such thing as a good tank because it doesn't matter which way you face the boss.
I like how you say tank's job. Like that's something that tanks usually think about.
Okay, that's
the
what
boss.
that's what
the
high-end
boss.
tanks generally do. That's like half of what they do is just make positionals easier.
Yeah. Oh man, but yeah, no, I think that I think you're right in the fact that it kind of gives melee that little extra more. I mean, there's not a lot that we could reinvent with the root will with when it comes to melee, right? There's not much more we can give them. I mean, do you have any ideas of how we could even change melee to make it more interesting if they took away positionals? There's not anything, right? You just go up to the boss and attack it.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
That's about as simple as it gets.
Like unless you put back in accuracy, I don't think that there's really
Oh,
anything
God.
you can do.
Who remembers accuracy?
I remember having to do what was it? You frontal accuracy for A9, I think it was,
I can't
because
remember.
the boss would just turn and you have to be in the front of the boss
Oh
sometimes.
yeah, because it was just. I think I remember. That was just the robot that stayed in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember.
Our missing trick attack.
Yeah, that too.
Balancing stats around accuracy. I remember healers always gymming up with as much accuracy as they could.
Yeah.
Or materia up and playing too much Monster Hunter right now. So I'm thinking gyms instead of materia. But yeah, yeah, that was one of the best things they could have done is get rid of accuracy. I think that made everyone's life a little bit easier because it's such like an artificial thing. You're just like, hey,
Yeah.
you just try to
Right.
plan that out, then everything else afterwards is just a unnecessary hassle. I thought.
And it wasn't even anything you could like find out unless you like looked it up. It wasn't shown
yeah.
anywhere in game what the accuracy
Yeah,
cap was or
it was,
anything. So it was
community
just one of
information.
those things that's it's just hidden and it's just bad for a game to have hidden stuff like that. I feel.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Melee more in a broad scope here, as in the balance between the jobs and everything else. Would you consider Melee in a balanced state right now? Like, there's not really a situation to where you would never bring this Melee, or you always have to bring this Melee.
You kind of always have. Well, for speed, you kind of always have to bring a samurai
Okay.
because it's just straight up better. But the rest of like the other three are really close, and it comes down to like the actual fight itself.
All right. So if you had a choice of one Melee, would you bring a samurai or would you bring like a ninja?
You would bring a samurai every time.
Every time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you have a dancer, you want a samurai.
I mean, a
Because they
dancer
just
works
play so
more or
well
less
together.
just as good with ninja. Because
Oh, yeah, it's
ninja
true. Yeah, on
generally
the
takes
2-minute death.
just as good advantage of everything except for a standard step. So
Okay. So, Llama, would you say they're all pretty balanced right now?
Yeah, I'd say so, but I'd always just bring ninja because that's me.
I mean, okay, yeah, that's fair.
Okay. Because back in the day, it was pretty bad.
Oh God.
We were doing
Yeah, it was.
Dragoon and Ninja every time, and that was it?
Yeah, Dragoon, Ninja, double ranged. For
Yeah.
Heaven's Word.
Raid buff,
And
raid
for-
buff alignment.
All of Stormblood, I think you also went Dragoon Ninja. Though I guess in speed you could get away with like some fights allowed you to do triple melee with
Yeah.
Monk as
Man.
well.
Yeah, I remember doing triple melee. I mean, even quad melee was fun. That's one of the things I'm sad about, is that with the main stat bonuses, the party bonus now, where you need one of each type of role, you can't really viably do triple or quad melee for speedruns anymore, which is kind of disappointing.
You
'Cause
can
that- doing
you
working
can
out
almost
strats
do
for that
triple
was fun.
melee.
Hmm?
Almost.
Almost, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Almost.
Yeah, it's just not really built to support doing 3 melee with the mechanics of fights. That's kind of the main reason, right?
Well, you get less stats. You lose 1% of your main stat for every.
Oh, yeah, because
unique
they
type of
kill you
roll.
Yeah,
for
that
it,
1%.
Yeah,
But then
that
also
1%, it's important.
Yeah. Part of the fun, I mean, a lot of the fun of doing triple or quad melee was just figuring out strats to make it work, because often you had to really think outside the box and do some really funky things with I don't know, arm's length or like cover or something really weird, or like even sending a ninja away for a range position and having them hold a mudra specifically for that. Like you did things like that, and it was. I remember actually in E2, I think there was this is Voidwalker. I think there was a speedrun team that actually
Yeah.
did do triple melee with a ninja.
That was my
and they
team, I
did
think.
have a
Nice.
ninja. Wait, that was your team?
Yeah.
Oh, was
yeah,
it?
you sent
Oh.
the
My
ninja
team
away
did that.
with a
Like we
mudra.
also started doing the triple melees back in Stormblood.
So, honestly, it just reminds me of back in the day. This was a long time ago, though. I think this was in Heaven's Ward, when China was getting their version of the game and everything else, and they were getting, I think it was A4 was released or something, and they beat it with a triple melee. And they the team that got it first after it was released on the China servers was triple melee because they knew the strat and everything else, and they just kind of abused it. I think what was it, Ninja, Monk, and Dragoon. But back in the day, I'm sorry, I'm going real far back. Back in A Realm Reborn, it was 2 monks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you wanted to keep.
That's
up with
because
the minions.
one back then one monk would just apply was it Dragon Kick applied a blunt resistance down on the boss, and so the other monk would just keep doing boot shines, crit boot shines with, and not having to do the low potency move.
Jeez, man. But now, I mean, today's standard, they've done a pretty good job of it, which I did. You know, I was kind of doubtful about the situation. I kind of thought that we were going to go into Shadowbringers and we were still going to have the same issues because it was just the buff thing. It was just, you know, balancing buffs and pure DPS, and that was the whole issue.
I mean, at the start of Shadowbringers, balance was really bad.
So, I mean, it was really bad at the beginning. When did it start to get fixed? I guess in
5.08 was when it got mostly fixed.
Okay.
Is that like the ninja changes happened then?
That was the ninja buffs that happened
right.
then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they changed everything in 5.1. Yeah, like I proc Titan with Ninja week 1, and I got 100 percentile week 1, and I was around the same damage as a green monk.
Yes, that's accurate. He's not exaggerating. It was a struggle.
It was ridiculous.
You know, I was in the top 60, top 50 paladins for A12S.
Oh.
Because
I
played paladin in A12S.
That was a rough one for paladin.
Paladin without no magic resistance, can't block magic.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. But yeah, no, that I'm
top 60 out of 65.
Yeah, 60 out of 65. Yeah.
Nice.
That's about accurate. Yeah, I remember those days. But I mean, I'm glad to see that it's kind of in a good state right now, and it's in such a good state that I guess SC doesn't really need to do too much. I mean, do you feel like there's anything SE needs to start doing for their melee? Do they need to introduce a 5th melee at some point, or are we just done with melee for a little while?
I think we're fine with melee. I just wish that they would make their strengths more niche rather than trying to make them so homogenized.
Okay. That's basically what I was about to say. Just changing up their burst timings. I mean, you have Monk on 90, but then you have Samurai on 2 minutes, you have Ninja on 2 minutes, you have Dragoon on... Well, Dragoon's kind of covering everything, but...
Yeah, Dragoon can do whichever, more or less.
Yeah, but what I would like to see is where they think about fight design with job design so that different melees will be better or worse at different fights, and it's sort of a question of whether you do take something or you don't based on their unique strengths. Because that's something we don't really have right now, except for, as I mentioned before, Monk really struggling in E9 relative to the other melees. But yeah, I think that would be interesting. The only drawback would be the gearing issue, in that it is very difficult to play more than one melee at a time, because you have to. They have barely any overlapping gear, and so if you want BIS on multiple melees, if you wanted to take them into a different fight, like you might take Monk into one, you might take Samurai into another, you can't really do that for a large number of weeks until you've had the time to farm everything for both of them, and that's only 2 out of 4.
Yeah, that bothers me about this game.
You can kind of do Monk and Samurai, but other than that, it's impossible.
So I guess it's funny they homogenize the job, but not the gear.
Yeah, I wish that they would go more in depth with cause the fact that Dragoon has so much just incidental cleave in their rotation. I want them to do more stuff like that, make some just better at multi-target fights, some better at single target fights, that kind of stuff.
We don't really have a lot of multi-target fights anymore, though.
I mean, yeah, we had we had T, where Dragoon was really good for the first two parts.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I wish that they would make fights have more niches like that, but they would also have to make the jobs have more niches for that to really work.
So if you had to differentiate the jobs, what would you give to each job to make them different from each other?
I
I guess. Oh, you go. You go
would
first.
for Monk, I would just make it like take away part of like more of their burst and just make it into their rotation itself, so they're just a sustained job, but that they would do more DPS than the others on a like 6-minute dummy, for example, just because they just had so much more. Whereas you could make Ninja more burst oriented, like which they more or less are right now, where they're really only doing damage inside of
Mhm.
trigger attack. And then like you can make Dragoon be 2 targets really good, but just be average at single target. And then I don't know what they would do with Samurai. Samurai kind of just does everything right now, so
Yeah, it has a bit of everything.
Okay. I mean, and that would be good enough for you guys to feel like the jobs are differentiated. Like you wouldn't have to really do anything else.
Yeah.
With it.
As long as the
long as-
fight design actually makes use of that
Yeah.
change in direction.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of the. I mean, we're dealing with this balance of like the more they change up the jobs, the less balanced it is in a way, depending on how the fights are working out. They would have to have a fight play to every strength of every job, right? Or it just kind of falls behind.
Yeah, like it's one of those things that I think they could do it with the ultimate fights, because generally people are expected to be at a higher level for those, so they could be expected to be able to play more than one job. But for Savage, it would have to be able to be cleared by every job, obviously, and not be too much of a
But see, that's the
nuisance to have
thing.
fun.
This game's always had it to where you can clear anything with any job, right?
Yeah,
It's just you can't be really cool looking and have high number DPS numbers and feel very valuable. You just feel like you're a little bit less valued because you're not playing a job that needs your extra buff. For example, back in the day, if you had a bard and there wasn't a dragoon in the group, fuck every
Oh,
other
God,
melee,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's kind of changed a good bit, but I don't know, man. I don't know. Do they still? Is there any job outside of melee that they like? Party finders are like, don't bring this job.
I would imagine Black Mage, but that's about it, I think.
Really, people still ragging on Black Mage?
I've seen a few just because Black Mage tends to be the ones that are the most greedy and just die the most, from my experience.
So it's like an assumption if they play Black Mage, they're going to be very greedy and.
Like, I only either see really bad Black Mages or really good Black Mages. There's not really an in-between, I feel, for that job.
I haven't seen PF discriminate against it for that reason, though. I haven't seen any of that.
Okay.
I think ever since we got past people wanting particular raid buffs, like they wanted Trick Attack, they wanted Bard for their buffs, all that sort of thing. I think people generally don't care. Like they sort of don't even really look at the party list.
That's true. I mean, half the time PF doesn't even have 5%.
No, they don't. But I see that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
if you're
usually
just going for
machinist,
clear,
dancer, 2 melee. They love having 2 melee.
yeah, I mean, if
yeah.
you're going for clear, if you're just going for clear, you don't really care as long as you have enough damage.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true.
So what was I? I was thinking about something. So now we're at the situation to where it can be 1 melee or 2 melee in party finder groups. I don't think we're not gonna. People are generally start to frown upon 3, of course. But I see a lot of people really encouraging, maybe not encouraging, but happy if they only have the 1 melee. I mean, you technically can go no melee. You still get hit by that, but I mean, it doesn't really stop the group from having issues with mechanics. But once you start getting into like the overabundance of melee, you start having issues with mechanics, and that is kind of an issue, right?
Oh, sure.
Do you
Yeah.
feel like that needs to change in any way, or is that just how it is? I mean, melees are less desirable overall than ranged, I would think, right now, right? No? Am I
Well,
just
yeah,
making stuff
we
up?
are kind of in a, at least in prog, we're seeing sort of the rise of the triple ranged party comp, or like the pseudo melee black mage, at least with Sphere.
Yeah. I mean, that's most high-end groups nowadays, I feel.
It gives you more flexibility, at
Yeah,
least
like,
in prog, especially in prog.
yeah.
Okay.
Especially if they go ninja as their melee, just because it can act as a range, so you can not worry about like uptime shots at all, because it doesn't really matter as long as the ninja is able to save stuff for it.
Hmm.
As long as you have a good ninja. Right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah,
which
Yeah.
is one of the reasons why I think ninja is so valuable in prog.
Mhm.
But
yeah, Ninja's
obviously,
quite
it's
straightforward, I would say. Like as long as you, I mean, you just really have to watch your trick timing, and then you do the same thing every 1 minute, 2 minutes, and if a mechanic screws you up, you're like, well, I'm gonna move that if I have to, or I'll just figure out a way. Like, because you
yeah,
have the tools to be at range during your burst window, so you still don't lose too much as long as you figure out how to work around it.
yeah. Like half your burst window is literally you not doing melee DCDs.
Yeah, so there's not even a worry about positionals for the most time with Ninja.
Like the only position role that I would ever really worry about in prog is just trick attack.
Another
And
good
that,
thing about Ninja, oh, sorry, and you want to go first?
no, you're good.
All right, and another good thing about Ninja is, and Samurai, is that they have the luxury of choosing when to do their positionals. So if you happen to be on the rear, you do your Aeolian Edge. If you happen to be on the flank, you do your Armor Crush. So it's not so strict, and the same thing with Samurai as well. Where if you happen to know that you're going to be stuck somewhere, you rework your rotation so you hit that positional when you're forced there. Unlike
Yeah,
Monk, where you have to be on the rear for a particular GCD, you have to be on the flank for another, and that's where Monk gets more complicated.
Okay.
yeah,
So ninja is probably like the preferred melee, you would say, for prog and groups and everything else, just because of that fact.
yeah. I think
Absolutely.
that they're just the most flexible and the one that cares the least about actual uptime, while still have it like and the fact that they have Shikuchi, you can save a lot of pulls. Like
Okay.
you can do so much.
It
Like
gets very
if someone
comfortable here.
dies, you can just teleport across the arena to be at that spot to save a mechanic or something like that. So
Okay. So that's what ninja brings. What about the other jobs? What are they bringing to the table that makes them more valuable to the group? Like Monk, for example. What is Monk bringing to the group?
Monk is very durable because they can go into Fist of Earth and just take less damage.
Okay.
That's one of the big things for them. That
That's
they're
true. Yeah, Fist of
in
Earth
general just the
and
most durable over like for longer periods are the most durable, whereas other jobs may be more durable for like 1 or 2 hits.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
just
Mantra.
really good for that. Yeah,
yeah,
Mantra.
they bring that.
Okay.
So
think
I
Monk's-
guess you could say Monk is like a survivability sort of
Yeah,
melee in that sense.
Okay. Todd, go ahead.
Give-
you were able to
That's
talk
okay.
during the ninja stuff, so I gotta.
I know, right? I know. I was just enjoying the ninja chat. That's all right. But
Okay.
I think Monk should have Chi Blast. Give it a ranged. Treat it like that.
I mean it has the Enlightenment, isn't that ranged? Whatever.
Let's give it more.
It does have range.
But like it's you have to charge it up, and it takes like fucking
Yeah.
7 seconds to charge it all the way up or something, right?
Yeah, I mean they used to have Howling Fist, but that was removed. Rest in peace.
Ah, yeah, true.
Okay. All right. So what about Dragoon? What are we adding to the group of Dragoons? Okay, bye Dragoon. I guess. I don't.
Dragoon's hard. Like,
Give it re-raise.
Oh, so we're giving it. It doesn't have anything currently. We're just trying to give it stuff. Lift from the floor. That's the new ability it has. Jeez. So it jumps. I mean, is it just like there and you're like, okay, they're playing Dragoon. I guess it's okay. I don't really care. Kind of situation. There's nothing that you're like excited that a Dragoon is bringing. They're giving you a
I love
tether.
Litany.
yeah,
It's my favorite buff.
Yeah, Litany's great.
Litany's great when it's not made in China.
What?
I feel like half the time when I get litany, it just makes my crit worse, dude.
Oh, does it?
It feels that way sometimes.
Okay.
Well, personally, I feel like Lidney is very underrated at the moment, especially when you combine it with other buffs. I feel like you get really big DPS when you have that. And then Dragoon kind of, like we said earlier, they have 90 or they have 30 seconds, 90s, well, 30/90, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. They sort of line up with everyone, so they do bring that. They can buff different people at different times
Yeah,
depending on who makes use of it the most.
Okay.
and in general, they're really good at like ad phases, just because they don't lose single target damage by doing range, like by doing their
Oh yeah, their
AoE
AoE
stuff.
combo is really strong as well.
And like
Well, their AoE rotation
yeah,
overall
and
is
like you
really
have
strong.
Nastran, you have Dragonfire Dive, you have what's the one in Life called? Jump.
Stardiver.
Yeah, that one. I can't remember the name of it right now. They're all just like AoE, so but it doesn't hurt their single target damage, so it can be really good for certain fights where there are ads or two bosses.
So, where are we looking at where that's actually beneficial? Is that just really E12S?
There's, I mean, the only time that we've really like used its AoE is T. I feel.
Okay. Okay. So I mean, they get ultimate.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
That's a fight design thing, like sort of what Sheenda mentioned before about Dragoon being really good in multi-target scenarios. We haven't really. Most multi-target situations in Savage, at least this expansion, have been very short-lived. So you have like E1, you have the ads phase, which, when optimized, they only live for about 13 to 15 seconds
Yeah.
when you're speedrunning. And then you have E7 had the ads phase, and if your tanks kept them close enough, that was an example of where Dragoon was really good.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Yeah.
could make use of it, if the tanks kept them close enough, you could get double targets with
Yeah.
your Gear Skogul and Nestrond.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah,
It was
what you
tight,
do
but
is
you could.
you stand inside one hitbox and you aim at the other one, and as long as you're inside the hitbox of one, your line AoE will hit the one you're standing on. So you don't have to be behind it. You don't have to line them up. You can just be inside one of them and aim at the other. But the positioning with the tanks had to be very particular.
It was also good for Titan because of the jails.
Yeah, they're burst
yeah.
on demand as well. So when you go into Life of the Dragon, you don't have to use you have like 8 seconds of leeway on whether to use your Nastron immediately or later. And so that's always nice as well, because it doesn't really mess with your rotation if you want to hold burst a little bit if it happens to line up in such a way.
Mhm.
And it was optimal as well. You wanted it to line up in that way
Yeah.
so that you could get the double target burst.
You know,
You can also
Whoops.
do it with the clouds and 9.
Yeah, Whoops was bringing that up in chat, and I think that's a pretty good point. I didn't think about it. If you can hit those clouds, that'd be great, because there are a lot of people who struggle with those clouds.
Yeah, I know that there was a group that was speedrunning it this week, same as us, where they had a Dragoon. I know they pretty much killed one of them entirely by themselves through just incidental AoE,
Oh, well.
like one of the clouds.
Okay. Okay. Do you feel like they just need to throw a little bit more ads and stuff like that into each fight just so Dragoon can see its full potential, or just kind of screw it? You know, we don't want ads in fights anymore.
I
I
think
personally,
yes,
there you go.
but it's also in general just for fights to be more varied.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's like-
I would personally like to see more mid-fight DPS checks on ads and things that don't last just a couple of GCDs. Like something that if like a random DPS check comes up and it's something that forces you to rework your rotation such that you have enough burst for that specific moment. Like that
Yeah,
sort
like-
of thing would really mess with.
Like the
Job
hand
rotation.
in A3S back then, when it's like swapped the HP, so you had to get like 2% on the hand before it finished the cast, because it was like it just like pulled the HP, and if it wasn't within 4%, it just wiped your group. Stuff
Level
like that's
checker.
really cool.
Need some more level checkers.
Yeah.
That's true too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Todd, would you? I feel bad. I was haven't had you talk too much, Todd.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. But I mean, would you agree, kind of with the ads kind of coming into play, it would make fights maybe a little bit more interesting because you have to change up a little bit?
Oh yeah, sure. No, I like using my my AOE toolkits, and allows me to pad, which is nice.
Yeah. You bring back A2, right? You guys like A2?
Oh no! Don't make me go into that Gobwalker again.
Oh man.
No, I don't like ads only bosses. I like my bosses to actually be bosses.
That's fair. But
I think it would be a cool phase, but as a full fight, I don't think so.
yeah. Okay. All right, Samurai. Are they just like DPS? That's what they bring?
Samurai brings a lot of DPS, though. They're more in the optimization part of DPS because you have to like learn when to alter your rotation a lot and all that stuff. But in terms of utility, like they bring Third Eye, which it's on like a 15-30 second cooldown, something like that.
I don't know.
Yeah, 15 seconds, I believe.
Yeah, it's just like a 10% damage reduction, and then you can also heal yourself off of that or do more damage based off of it. So they're really good for like big hits, like AoEs overall. That they can help the healers. They can just do more damage from it. It's
Okay.
like they have a lot of niche stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Well, then that kind of covers everything they bring to the table. When we're talking, so a lot of these questions I kind of asked all of you kind of things that would be good to talk about. One of them was talking about uptime and during different tiers. So I feel like at least one of you feels very strongly about how uptime has been different on different tiers and how SE has kind of adjusted it so far. Do you want to talk on that a little bit?
I'm assuming that's me.
Yeah, this is you.
Yeah, well, I have some opinions.
love
But
the diagrams.
this is sort of my something I noticed as a tank was that this tier is really different from last tier in terms of how friendly it is to melees with the size of the boss hitboxes, and just it feels like a lot of the mechanics, like even in E12 there are lines on the ground that show you how big an AoE is, and there is one AoE that is like just very conveniently not as large as melee range, so you can always keep melee range, and like there's a whole phase where the boss is just large enough so that the melees can always hit it. Like you don't have to really do much to keep your uptime through that. And unfortunately for tanks, that means they also don't have to do much, which is something I liked more last year, is that tanks had a little bit more responsibility, a little bit more interplay with the melees in giving them uptime. But yeah, I would say this tier, the experience for melees is much easier than it was before.
Yeah, definitely.
Except conflag, that actually sucked for tanks, man.
That
The boss is
Conflag was
targetable, and you
horrible.
have to just stay there at the edge. I don't want to see a mechanic
I
like
felt
that ever.
so bad for them.
Ever.
Like,
It was the worst one. Absolutely. But I mean, do you feel like there should be parts of the fight where they kind of throw you off like that and make you kind of have to think about just not attacking the boss, and it's just the best way, and then finding ways that you can kind of cheat time and space and try to like get up there, get a hit, run back as fast as possible?
I definitely think that there should be,
Okay.
because like it just makes learning a fight to like a high level a lot more important. Because like most of the fights right now, you learn a fight and you don't really gain much from learning it more, just because you can keep uptime in most strats anyways, because of how big the hitboxes are.
Yeah. So you're asking for smaller hitboxes?
Yes.
Smaller hitboxes and movable bosses. Like more mechanics that require boss positioning, because that way it opens up to more creative strategy on how you keep uptime for your melees. I think that would make prog overall and speedrunning as well more interesting long term.
I think actually that's something that, especially from a perspective as a tank, my perspective is that I always feel like every single Savage boss should require some sort of positioning. It sucks when you overposition and you go a little bit too far and it's like, well, fuck, I can't go back, right? Then you're like spinning the boss around and doing everything else. But it adds like a finesse.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and then the boss, I mean, you'll see that in this tier a lot because like if you don't have it centered just right, like for certain mechanics, it'll actually rotate around and reposition itself.
It tends to look where it's going.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't even appear to move, but it's just like 1 pixel off and it just has to...
This little snap turn real quick.
That part's
I think if the tank doesn't position the boss before the mechanic correctly, then you just get punished for it. I don't think the bosses should reposition themselves.
I agree. Like it's so common nowadays for a boss to just walk center or teleport to center before every big mechanic.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of sad.
No, I completely agree. For example, and this is what I keep thinking of every time. I think it was, what was it, E2S, where you're doing a Void Walker.
Mm-hmm.
And that was purely, like, the boss, you had complete control over where the boss was the entire time. And if you didn't put him in a good spot, melee could be fucked.
Melees would mold.
Absolutely, we would.
Yeah. And
all the ads would be in a diagonal too if you'd mess it up and people would freak out.
Yep. I felt like that was one of the best designed fights in consideration for boss, adding in extra stuff for tanks and melee having to deal with. It sucks because I'm kind of one of those people who feel like you shouldn't have to face the consequences of other people in the group. But then again, if you're a solid group that plays together, I feel like you should have to face the consequences of the other people in the group because you are a group working together to make it happen. But in Party Finder, I'm always like, fuck this guy, right? It's a little different
this is
scenario.
also an MMO. Like it is the nature of an MMO that you're supposed to be playing with other people and working together to achieve common goals. Like that's part of the joy of the genre.
You know, I gotta, on that note, just think, what the hell Square Enix was thinking about when they did E9S and they're like, all he has to do is just step in there real quick and he fucking kills him. You know? Just screwing with other players. What exactly were they thinking? They're like, man, I just played Fall Guys and this was real fun. I want to see this happen in E9S for some reason. Just like,
it's aggravating.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like I think it's fun in like a static, but because of the amount like griefing you can do the rest of the party, like it's so bad for PF because like there's the tiles where you just kill them, or you can just look at someone and give them damage down, but nothing happens to you. Because you fuck up, someone else has to pay the consequence. Like that seems kind of for Party Finder.
I had, I'm happy because I feel like that does kind of like add in a little bit of fun. But they just went to town on E9S, man.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Getting boxed in on tiles is like the worst thing ever.
And you see nobody else moving. You're like, well,
no
I
one's
guess
moving.
I die here.
Or someone refreshes and they don't go, or they don't quite refresh it. They just move in and then like, well, I guess I'm just gonna fall.
That's when you try to do the strat where, like, because you can actually go from like a corner tile to like the far tile without stepping over the inner tile there.
Yeah.
You can do that just barely, but half the time you either kill yourself or you kill the person on the inner tile.
Yeah, because then they move at the same time and just like, you kind of just have to sit there and drop and just like, otherwise.
Yeah, well, if you see someone running at your tile, you start to get a little bit worried and you have a flight response.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that was just kind of going in the whole conversation of just like griefing your team by doing different things. And it's the same thing with how they do the buffs, right? And the damage down versus vulnerability buffs.
Yeah.
If you mess up a mechanic and you get damage down, that fucks you over, makes you look bad. If you get, a vulnerability up, it makes you look bad, but then you're like, healers adjust, right? You can add that in.
Uptime soccer. Yeah.
Anymore.
No one would do uptime soccer if it was damage down.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I think that I'm still kind of debating if that's like again, small tangent, if that's like a good choice or not to have damage downs over vulnerabilities. Because I know vulnerabilities are damaging, much more damaging than the damage downs. But I kind of like the fact that if DPS is kind of being greedy, they get punished and they lose DPS overall. Because that's what
That's
people
Square Enix.
Yeah, it's brutal.
That's Square Enix hitting them where it hurts. Their logs.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's really good when it's you doing it to yourself, but not when it's other people doing it to you, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it also helps because what they can do with it if they do damage downs instead of vulnerabilities is that they can make mechanics more complex even in Savage, because just because you get damage down doesn't mean that you'll die to the next raid AoE.
Right.
So you can see further in the fight more often, so they can make the fight slightly harder mechanically.
Yeah,
which I
that's
think
true.
is something really nice.
Yeah, I didn't think about that too much, but yeah, they could actually make fights a little bit more difficult just because they make the vulnerability down not exist anymore, because you will just keep doing the fight. But all right, so let's see what else. The other thing that we had on here was about burst windows, and we were talking about it a little bit and kind of throwing stuff. When you're explain drifting burst windows. I think was that you too, Zeph?
I think I did touch on it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
About like whether deciding whether you use something around a mechanic that's really difficult to keep uptime on, and just take the loss within your burst window or save it for afterwards. And I think that really just comes down to kill time and also alignment with the rest of the party. Because if you have something on 1 minute, like trick attack, for example, if you delay that trick by 20 seconds, it is never aligning with everyone else ever again for the rest of the fight, unless either they hold for 20 seconds on their next use, or you hold for an entire 40 seconds and miss an entire use.
Yeah.
And so usually it's not worth it. But depending on kill time, sometimes you do decide that it is beneficial to hold because you won't lose anything. The boss is going to die, you're not going to lose an extra use, so you just go for alignment in the end and better use of those buffs.
I mean, how difficult is it to be aware of that and when you should hold it so everybody else gets that extra bit of it? I mean, it's like impossible to really know normally, right? You just pay attention to your own stuff. You don't really pay attention to what everyone else is doing. So if you're in like Party Finder, you can't really do anything about it, right?
There's no expectation that people will do any sort of alignment in Party Finder. You just play your own game.
Yeah, if you die and you mess up your rotation, just use it when it's ready again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because like you might, as a ninja, you might die just before your trick, and so you're like, oh, I'll just hold it until the next chain window, and then the chain window comes and goes, and you're like, well, I just held that for nothing. That person didn't even use chain.
Yeah.
That feels really bad.
Yeah. But in like when you're in an actual static group, you can start aligning that stuff, and I think that's kind of where a lot of the cool stuff with melee, and I guess DPS in general is that you can start aligning this stuff and communicate.
You'll see more of that like as people get like best in slot, like where you don't lose the use or anything. And we did that, like we did a couple speed runs where you hold like a Tenchi Gen like for your last, you just line it up like for the last 90 seconds.
Yeah, like when we were doing E9 speed this week, like we'll kill it faster once we're all best in slot and we've been in there more. But we had to use everything pretty much on cooldown at this current time. But we were trying to figure out how we would do it if the fight went to like just under 6 minutes, where you have an extra almost full minute where you can just move burst windows around to help it, stuff like that. Which is part of it's a lot of the fun of speedrunning for me, is seeing those small optimizations that you would really never see in a normal group.
All right. Yeah, I mean, and that's... just out of curiosity, Zeph, Llama, are you guys doing any kind of speedrun stuff at the moment? Or trying to mess around with it?
Not until I get a weapon.
My group isn't fully geared yet, but we do have plans to do so.
Okay.
But I mean, even in prog, you do take a speedrun mentality into prog because you do have to work really hard. You have to work together to try and align those things. And like even when in the cases where you do need to hold something, communication's really important, because the only person that understands how badly they're getting screwed over by a mechanic is that person, and maybe no one else understands how bad it is, so they need to tell everyone, well, this isn't really working, we might need to move something. But then if you have a 2 minute or 3 minute that needs to be held 30 seconds, or a minute, like maybe you need to hold your 2 minutes for 1 extra minute, it's very hard to know exactly when to use your 2 minute, and so it's up to the person that knows what's going on to communicate to the rest of the team. And so during prog, in my case, that was Whoops, our Dragoon, that was doing that, because they have all the cooldowns, they have timers for everything pretty much. So he would know exactly when things needed to go up, and he would tell everyone else when they're pressing their buttons, because if you're just sitting on a cooldown, you don't know exactly when 1 minute later is from when you would normally use it.
Especially when ACT isn't working. So you don't have a timer or anything.
Yeah,
so
when the timer on ACT is actually really helpful, and when you don't have that, I actually remember I think it was last year, I actually had a stopwatch that I was pressing at the start of every call just so I could keep track of time.
Yeah, we, like, for my group, we all had, well, a lot of us had some kind of timer that we would use when we were trying to figure stuff like that out.
That's awesome. Would you say that Whoops kind of got that a lot from all his figuring of timing and Beat Saber? That's kind of.
I'm not so sure it's related, but yeah, it's just that Dragoon's buffs have all the timers baked in pretty much. Like you have a 30-second that you're pressing on cooldown, so you know when 1 minute is. You have Dragon Sight on the 2 minutes, so you know when 2 minutes are. You have Lidney on 3, so you know exactly when that is. So if you're holding 2 minutes for 3 minutes, Dragoon just knows, oh, I hold my Dragon Sight and I use it with Lidney. And that's easy for them, but the Scholar has no idea, or the Astra has no idea exactly when 2 minutes is. And so whoever it is that's responsible for the big alignment buff, like if it's 3 minutes, in that case it would be Lidney, maybe it's a Bard with Battle Voice. They're the one that needs to communicate to everyone else exactly when that's going to happen.
Okay. That's actually a pretty interesting point that I didn't really think about. So I guess that's something that Dragoon brings, is a timer.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
it's
I
There
guess.
you go.
Yeah. All right. So here's another point that we had from you, is understanding greed versus grief on Melee. I don't really. So what do you mean by that?
So that, I'm pretty sure that was mine, where it's
Yeah.
like, a lot of the time you'll see people like Sino, a lot of the big streamers, that they'll be greeting a lot of stuff, but they don't die. But then you'll see other people that just die to it every single time because they don't understand what they're actually doing about it, that they're trying to copy someone.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, you can greet a lot of mechanics, but still being safe about how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because like, what I do when I was like, when learning uptime for stuff, like especially for anti-air and stuff like that, said I would just stand out for a few times and try to figure out like where the certain like snapshots for stuff is, and where my GCD would be rolling at that time, before I would ever actually try to go for it.
Okay.
And then once you've done it that way, then you get it almost every single time. But if you're just going for it without knowing if you can or not, that's when you're griefing, because most of the time you'll just straight up die.
So explain a little bit more about how to know when it's safe or not. Like what's understanding and following the snapshotting? Because I don't think a lot of people understand that too well.
So like, a lot of mechanics have a cast time off the boss that is usually when it snapshots. But like, if it doesn't, there's sometimes ads that do it, or there's a lot of mechanics that come after each other, but they're all the same time after each other. So like, for anti-air, wide air, for example, or wide angle, all those mechanics happen at the same time after each other. So if you know the like snapshot between the two of them that isn't being greeted, you'll know the same thing for the one that is being greeted. So you can then put that in, like, if you're off the boss, you can just do, like for Ninja, you just do throwing daggers, so you keep your GCD rolling, so you know where you are and if you're able to get that or not.
Okay.
That's exactly what I do. Yeah, I agree 100% with that.
Okay. So I guess my question is snapshotting kind of consistent over a lot of different mechanics, or does it vary per mechanic?
It's generally consistent, but there's definitely
almost
some
always.
that are
Yeah.
different. Like,
Yeah, it's
most of the
almost
time it'll
always
be at
like
the end of a
hostile.
cast or like the start of an animation, but there's always a few things here and there that aren't that way, which you just have to learn by dying to it, honestly.
Yeah, I think if you're
Like,
having trouble with a mechanic, like if you just review like a VOD or something like that, and just look at like visual cues or audio cues, or even just the cast bar. I mean, that's why I have the boss cast bar so big, so I can see maybe exactly where in that bar, like okay, like if it's at this point, then I absolutely have to move out. So just things like that can
yeah.
help.
Yeah.
One piece of advice I think I can give is, and this is more aimed at the pass chasers, I guess, like people that are trying to improve as much as they can. What a lot of people do is they will greed something successfully, like they'll hit a GCD, they'll disengage, and they'll avoid the AoE, and they get it 9 times out of 10, and then just randomly it won't work, and they'll just die, and that's due to GCD misalignment. And something that I have done, like for example in Shiva Savage last year, was I would check my GCD alignment against the cast bar prior to the one that I needed to greed on, just to make sure. Like I would say like if it gets to the start of the word, like if I hit my GCD at the start of the word on the cast bar beforehand, I know that it's safe to greed. If I'm like halfway through the word, then I know it's too late. And so when it comes to the mechanic, I'll know if I try to greed this, I'm gonna die. And so, I mean, it's not greed if you know it's gonna work. But if you see that your GCD is misaligned, and you know you've clipped your GCD a couple of times up to that point, and you have an inkling that it might not work, and you go for it anyway, that is greed.
Yeah, I think that happens to me with Burnt Strike when it's lightning that second hit. It's like if I know my GCD's off by a little bit, like I can't hit it. I just have to back off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's also where you see a lot of the difference between melees that are just good and the melees that are actually like really good and like great, because they're the ones that know when you will die to this or not, so that they never die to those general melee deaths that a lot of people just die to.
The less you die, the better you are, right? That's kind of, yeah.
Because like that one GCD will never make or break a kill for you or a parse. Like, crit variance and damage variance is way too high nowadays for that one GCD to ever matter enough.
Yeah, even if you mess up in your rotation somewhere, crit variance might mean you're still having a really good run, and you should continue trying your best.
Yeah.
If you're a parse chaser, that like, you have to have
if you're just trying to self-improve, even like it's not over if you make a little mistake. You still might get your best run.
And to be honest, a lot of the time you learn more about how to be better at your job when you make mistakes.
You can join practice parties too. That can, if you really want to just try and greed,
that's
and
actually
not feel too bad.
That's what I did on Monk. Actually, I went into E9 tiles practice, and then that party ended up going all the way to Enrage.
Yeah,
nice.
But
that's
another
really
thing,
really nice. That's like amazing. Just to let you know. Go ahead.
I think some people need to understand that they should use early practice, like early prog. So maybe you're in a practice party, or if you're in blind prog with your static, you should be using those early pulls to figure things out. So what Sheenda said, where you disengage, you throw your ranged attack. There's no expectation that you're going to clear. You don't even know what half the fight is yet. You're not going to clear. You might as well take the opportunity to experiment. And if your rotation gets screwed up, it doesn't matter. You have many more pulls. You should be using those repeated pulls to figure out those things, such that when it comes time to clear, you can greed safely and you can do good damage without risking anything unnecessarily.
I think that's a pretty general, good statement to make for everybody playing the game, is that if you are doing practice, and someone's messing up a mechanic, they're trying to figure it out, you should still, the stuff that you already know, try to figure out how to make it better, as you're going through. And you just kind of learn, and your DPS goes up every time that you try to make things better. So I guess I just saw it in chat. Todd, you just don't like jumping puzzles, man? You just...
Oh, no. They make me rage. Zheph is like an expert at it, but like for me, it's just God. Like I couldn't finish the what was that? that Summerfest one. Like I was at the last jump and I just fell and I just like, nah, never again.
Okay.
That's sad.
So,
That's one jump away.
what's that dungeon where you have to kind of go on the line? Like
Oh,
one of the first ones. I forget
That was
what
the
fairy
Llama
one.
Rank?
Omega.
Yeah.
It was in Omega.
So you're
Yeah,
against
it's
them
Don
adding
Meg.
stuff like that
Yeah.
to Savage, where you have to actually balance and maybe jump across the lines in order to get there quickly.
I don't think I've ever made it across that because I've always tried to sprint and jump the gaps, and so I just get carried
my
over
God.
that
see,
every
I
single
got
time.
really good at that one point, but ever since then I've just died every single time, or fallen off every single time.
It's too tempting.
It is.
It really is.
And I'm very sad about that because if you go in with the trust and you see Thancred just Shikuchiing over, I'm like, why can't I do that?
I know. That's bullshit.
That would
I think
be
I tried that my first time in that dungeon. I'm like,
Yep.
it doesn't work. No.
Okay. So let's talk about things that are maybe underutilized with melee, things that are not really used too often. Do you guys have any idea, like, what you can think about? Like, I always see melee not doing this, and I have no clue why they're not doing it.
I think, well, at least in Party Finder, I think many melee, they just don't know what their feint button is. And for me as ninja, like I use like my shade shift and bloodbath, but it just seems broken. But I think feint is probably the number one thing, especially for melee. They don't
Yeah.
apply it correctly.
That's
part
it.
of that is also sometimes people do use feint, but you know that it's magic damage, and it's sort of like, well,
Right.
at least you tried. But
Yeah.
the game doesn't really teach you the difference
It is
between.
really hard to understand when to use
usually
Bait and when
intuitive.
not to.
You have to look at the animation and you're like, well, it looks magical. I think it's magical, so I'm not gonna feint that one.
Like the funny
I
thing
mean,
is,
you can check it.
like there's things like that, but then you have the Proteans in E12 in E11, where the
Mhm.
Proteans themselves are physical.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
All right.
you can usually tell if it gives you a physical vuln stat,
Yeah.
it's physical.
But it's one of those things that people just don't think about because it looks magical.
Yeah. I mean,
But there's
usually, well, actually, that's probably a bigger point to bring up is that for people that do feint, they usually reserve it for tank busters, but there are physical raid wides.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Proteans are raid wides. It hits everyone. Those, you don't often think about those things. You don't have a lot of people thinking, well, I can offer party-wide mitigation on this AoE because there's usually, I feel like there's a bit of just the idea that AoE equals magic and tank buster equals physical, and I think that can confuse people into not using feint or even addle the correct way. Because in E9 the busters are magical, and so you would use addle on that if you wanted to, but probably don't.
Or
It's
even
better
just
used
parts where
elsewhere.
there's, yeah, and even just like parts of the fight where there's like a lot of like forced mobility or like movement, and the tank is just taking heavy autos or
Yeah.
physical autos. Like that's a
Yeah,
good
auto
use.
attack feints are underrated or
Yeah,
Yeah,
undervalued
like
as
I
well.
know in
Autos.
UCOB I would always feint like when you were going for the exaflares, because everyone just has to move there. So like you just in case you always want to have a feint up there so that the healers don't have to emergency heal.
Okay.
And then again, then sometimes you have autos that are magical.
Mhm.
But
All right. Is feint really just it? Everybody's
I
just
think
forgetting feint?
feint's a big one. But then there's also that a lot of people just don't use Bloodbath and Second Wind.
Yeah, you gotta just use your
Like
defensive
melees have so much self healing that they just never use, and then they die to a mechanic being like, "Oh, I didn't get healed." I'm like, "You have your own healing. Use it. Like
Mhm.
if you know that you're not getting healed, just use it.
Yeah.
And if you get healed, great. You don't die. If you don't get healed, oh, you didn't die because you actually thought about what was going to happen rather than just letting it happen."
And shade shift
I
has
agree.
saved my ass so many
Yeah.
times.
I obsessively use bloodbath, maybe even too much, like to the point where I don't have it where I do need it. Like at any time my HP drops, I'm always worried because you know how pug healers are, and so I'm
Oh,
always
yeah.
trying to keep myself healthy and not rely on them.
You know, I will say, especially in like Party Finder, it can be real confusing because there's a lot of people who have like buffs and damage reduction and everything else to where you like see a mechanic happen and then just sometimes you take more damage on this time and sometimes the next time you're in a different group and you take less damage or you take more damage just because one player is hitting a buff that the other team was not hitting when it was going through.
Yeah.
And so it's something that, and of course you think my health's down, whose fault is it? Healers. It's never that paladin isn't using a divine veil, or that paladin isn't doing this, or that one melee's not hitting feint, or that one person's not putting an addle out there, right? So you're not really thinking of all these different factors that are out there, and I feel pretty bad for healers. I gotta say, I really do, because sometimes they get used to that too.
Yeah.
Right. So they're healing, and they're like, the last group, no one ever died or had a big issue. Now people are dying every time. What's going on, right? And half the time, healers don't even talk to each other when they join a group, right? Isn't that weird?
True.
Isn't that weird that you go into like a group with like tanks? They have to talk. They have to know when to swap. They have to know everything else. Healers are like, fucking just heal everything and just either they'll heal or
usually you just have an established chat between the two. It usually gets figured out pretty fast, and one of them is going to be the DPS healer,
The
and
alpha healer. Oh my god!
Yeah, the other poor healer is
That's
just
great.
going to be stuck dealing with all the top up and doing everything themselves and crying for help. None forthcoming.
Yeah.
The DPS healer and the healer is usually what I see, but yeah, I don't know. Do you think that there should be more? Go ahead, Shania.
Like even other than that, like you can use your movement abilities for a lot of things that people just don't. Like Shikuchi, like I said earlier, like you can save pulls if you're aware of the person that needs to be in this tower died or something like that. You can teleport to that tower when
I've done that.
when not all 8 people have to, and you can save a pull even if it's a lot of damage, something like that. But you can just save a pull, which is way more important.
Mm-hmm.
And like Dragoon has so many jumps back to the boss. They have elusive jump to go away from the boss. Samurai can do the same thing. Monk can go towards the boss. Like people don't utilize their movement abilities to save dead pulls, basically. Even though you can save most pulls if you're aware of what's happening. Which is also why I always want people to learn the fight rather than learning the dance.
Yeah.
Yeah, understanding how it works.
That's a big issue, actually. I think with everyone overall is that they just learn what they had to do to survive, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't learn what they can do with the fight and how to make it better. But
yeah, which is also why a lot of the time you hear people say, "I don't know how I died." And I'm just like, well, the healer was dead, so the healer stat got put on you instead.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, no awareness of the whole situation.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. I actually think that it might be a good time to talk about how to prep to be a good melee. We talked about some things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what are some things people could do before they even start raiding to be a better melee?
Training dummies.
Yeah,
That's basically it. I mean,
You want your
don't
positionals. You go ahead.
and just not just doing your opener, but like your whole rotation for, I'd say, at least like 7 to 8 minutes, like at a time.
mm-hmm.
Like not just a little bit, because then you kind of get a flow. Like you're like, all right, like this is coming up at 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Like you get like all of your buffs coming back like, once again. Like you get your reopener basically.
Okay.
You also want your positionals to be as close to muscle memory as you can get them before you go in. You don't have to be perfect, but you want to at least be pretty close. Like you sort of instinctively know where you need to be on the boss to hit your positional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the less time you have to think about your rotation, the more time you can think of like mechanics and stuff like that, which is most of what raiders need to be thinking about at that point.
Yeah, and if you're like completely new to Savage, I see some people in chat saying this, but yes, 24 mans and just getting familiar with the different like markers, raid debuffs, stacks, spreads, telegraphed, untelegraphed attacks. That's going to help you too.
Yeah, that's generally what I recommend as well. You can go into easier content than Savage to practice, because things like 24 mans actually have a good amount of chaos and a good amount of random boss movement and things. Like
Yeah.
you might deal with a terrible tank, but that's actually good for practice because it teaches you how to play your job in an unpredictable situation,
Mhm.
which is a step up from a dummy. Like a dummy, anyone can hit a dummy and learn their rotation, but 24 mans and extremes, depending on the fight design, will be a really good place to give you a more forgiving environment to learn how to play.
Yeah. And one thing I like to do, especially when going into like extremes or 24 minutes, is like force yourself into a bad situation in your rotation. So like use something early, use it late, so that it doesn't line up like it's supposed to, and learn how to work around that. Because in a fight, you'll very rarely get your perfect rotation the entire time. And if you start having to think about how you're fixing your rotation, then you'll stop thinking about the fight and you'll likely just die.
Okay.
So like I purposely put myself into situations that I would probably never actually be in, but that if I am ever in that position, I have an idea of what I'm gonna be doing to fix it.
Something I like to do is if I, like on Dragoon, if I miss a Chaos Thrust or something, rather than reapplying, like if I'm practicing and I'm trying to learn how to play a clean rotation, rather than putting it up immediately, like this is training dummy practice mostly, where DPS doesn't matter, I will, rather than just either jumping off the dummy and starting again, which takes time because you have to wait for your cooldowns, I will just pretend that I was doing something. So I'll be like, well, this would be the Chaos Thrust, but I'm going to skip it this time and I'm going to reapply it when it's supposed to be up. So like if you miss it one combo, then you reapply it. Or rather, if you reapply it on the next combo, just remember that you need to do it one combo earlier on the next one so that it's aligned where you would expect it to be. I think that's a good way to practice because you save yourself time.
Okay.
Hmm.
Todd, you want to throw anything else in there?
No, I think that covers it for the
Okay.
most part. Just practice your rotation and then just getting used to raid content elsewhere, and then just hop in, dive in.
Also know what your non-damage buttons do.
Yeah. And I guess maybe lastly, after you've done all that, maybe just play other roles, because that does help you become a better player.
Yeah, that's true. Especially for melees, like playing a tank can help a lot.
And vice versa.
And the other way as
Tanks
well.
playing melees.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, we got a couple more topics we're going to discuss, but if you have any questions, if chat has any questions, I know we have a lot of experts in chats that don't have questions at all. They just know everything, and they're just kind of here to judge us.
Of course.
So, but if you have any questions at all, even if you want to talk about, what's up with Llama's room eyes at purple, we can have those kind of questions.
Look.
Feel free to ask anything you want. Just send it through that form so it's a little bit more organized. I can't really keep up with chat and everything else going on at the same time. So, that being said, I do want to ask one question. The state of Melee. We've been pretty positive about it. Would you say that Square Enix has finally got to a good point outside of maybe a few things that you'd like them to change? It's pretty much in a good place?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
My personal thoughts when it comes to any job design is if you make it fun enough, people will play it. And a lot of people are playing a lot of melees. Like even back in Stormblood when Samurai wasn't meta, you still, like it was hard to not have a Samurai in your party because of how much people were enjoying it.
This is Samurai in Stormblood. I mean, if you didn't play it, you kind of one of those hipsters, right? Hey, that's what the expansion was for Samurai.
Yeah, true.
And then Samurai, like that. What bothered me in Stormblood was that people denied Samurai from PFs, even though Samurai was amazing for PFs. Because you never had to worry about burst timings; it was just straight up damage. So like, it was so good for PF, but people just didn't want it for some reason.
Because of the
stigma,
the weird idea that you have to have buff alignment that people are not even going to align anyway in a PF. Like Samurai is just damage personified.
Yeah.
Back then, like it doesn't matter what the situation is; they just have to generate a Madari and then slap it on the boss.
Yeah, like sure it wasn't as good as like Ninja and stuff like that early on in Stormblood, but like,
Mhm.
and like you wouldn't really take it to many different speeds, but like for PF it was so good.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of people still are confused about when you go into a PF is that they bring in expectations from a solid group that's doing like prog and kind of doing week one mentality to a party finder just doesn't really work.
Yeah,
Um, like you were saying earlier, it's a solo. It's a solo game when you
yeah,
go into Party Finder. It's you, and you're just trying to figure out how to improve your own little bubble of existence in that Party Finder and put out whatever you can, words of advice or whatever else. But you can't change someone's play in a Party Finder. You can't completely fix how they're playing the game. You might be
I
able to-
often
Go
try
ahead.
not to.
Yeah?
Oftentimes trying to offer people advice, even if they're accepting of it, can cause them to be so distracted by that one piece of advice you've given them that they'll mess up something else. So, like if you say, "Oh, you should use this thing at this particular moment," when it comes to that moment, they'll be thinking so hard about that. Like if they earnestly want to take on your advice, they might mess up something else. Like those sorts of pieces of advice are fundamentals that people need to fix before going into the party. Once they're there, they're going to play how they play for the most part, and you just have to
yeah,
take it how it comes.
Yeah.
that's true.
All right. So we're all happy about Melee. We had a Melee like one expansion ago. We can't really expect another Melee to come up in the next expansion, right? It's done for right now.
Melee healer with
I
hammers.
We thought, right? We were,
Like,
we were thinking.
I could
Yeah.
see it happen, but I hope it doesn't.
I would like them to fix the gearing issue first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like it's just too hard to like you might be a melee player, but you're really just a ninja player or a samurai player for like 10 weeks. Or like
Yeah.
depending on if you're pugging or in a static, maybe it's 15 weeks and you're just stuck playing that one thing. You could play something else, but you're gonna have like 10 eye levels lower and it doesn't feel good and you don't feel like you're bringing as much as you could to the party. Like oftentimes it's like, well, I could play something else that I want to play, but what if this
Mhm.
party really needs the DPS? I'm gonna bring what I have geared already.
Okay. So, I mean, that kind of goes in line with things that Square Enix needs to fix with the balance overall, is the gearing situation.
Yeah, definitely.
I can bet you guys like $10 it's going to be fixed in the next expansion.
You think?
I don't think so.
I think it's going to be fixed. They're gonna do it. They're gonna make a leap where they
I would
just
hope.
say they've heard
Well-
enough of it, right? Even if they add another melee, 100%. It's going to be fixed in the next expansion. They're going to change up the gear stuff. So somebody
a
like
hot take.
entire chat's like, no, it's not going to happen. They're like, no, you have too much trust in Square Enix. Look, sometimes we have to put a little bit of trust in Square Enix. They've done some stuff.
I mean, they have,
Right.
and I trust them to keep things balanced between the melees. I don't think that they're gonna fix.
I don't trust them to keep balanced melees. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the gear, maybe. I think it's going to get out of balance as soon as the expansion hits. But
I mean, give him like a patch, and I think that it'll be relatively balanced. Because as always happens, players will find better rotations than they do. That's happened every single expansion with most jobs. Like, you'll get there.
I mean, when they're looking at like the job balance and everything else, they have to be looking at the different jobs, different roles and everything else, and see the issues with the gearing system currently. And that has to be a big red sore thumb right now, is the melee gearing system, right?
Yeah, like it's the only role that can't share gear between themselves. Like, so you can never be a melee player, whereas you can be a caster player, you can be a ranged player, you can be a tank player, but you can't just be a melee player without having either multiple characters or taking forever to get to that point.
I actually gear up my physical ranged alongside ninja as opposed to other melees because of the sharing of the aiming accessories.
Oh, that's smart, yeah.
I
If
would
I-
do that if my group had me play things that weren't melee. So like,
Yeah. Oh, this is just for my pub
Yeah.
fun, basically. Like, if I've got ninja gear, then my next choice, instead of having to wait another 8 weeks to play another melee, is well, I can have fun on a phys range instead, and it's not that too far off. That's
Yeah.
sort of what it would be like with melees, between melees. I mean, you do have monk and dragoon sharing slaying accessories, and samurai as well. But then the left side is all different. And then it's not sharing at all with ninja.
Yeah, then just the weird one mainly.
Yeah, llama.
Yeah. Hey.
I don't know. I feel like that's going to be changed. I do think I can't imagine it being balanced going into like everything just messes up as soon as they add new abilities, and they kind of tinker around with it a little bit. The expansion messes everything up with balance. I'm glad they were able to get it though. Here,
Yeah.
It's been pretty solid for a good portion of the expansion, and monks, at the very last Savage raid, have their quality of life.
I'm surprised that they were that good at balancing both the reworks this expansion. Because like Ninja was quite balanced after the rework, Monk's quite balanced after the rework. Like I'm surprised because usually, like at start of expansions, it takes an entire patch for them to fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like this time, it just worked more or less right out from the gate.
Yeah. Well, that being said, I'm still going to go on the fun question. Tell me what's the next melee that's going to be introduced. Maybe not this expansion, but the next melee introduced to the game.
Beastmaster.
Is that a melee? I guess it's a melee.
It's a melee pet job.
It's a melee pet job. Yeah, melee with pet.
But that's going to be like a limited job. That's not going to be like a melee job,
be.
right?
They could make it work, maybe. It doesn't have to be like a blue mage, right?
It's going to be like, yeah.
I still want it to be something where it's like, I think it's like Rune Fencer it's called, where it's basically red mage, but where it's mostly melee. With like some ranged.
I don't know. That'd be kind of boring to me. I don't know.
I mean, that's just what I think. That's just what I think they're going to do. Because I think that the hammer that we've seen would be tank. If they even make that a job.
Yeah. All right, Zheph.
I have no idea. I mean, the only thing I've really heard floated was Beastmaster, but I think if you want that, you need to fix pet AI before you go further with that concept.
The way that they're fixing
read
pet
with
AI is like they're just making it to where it doesn't really exist. They're just actions. And it's just like graphic.
Which is,
over there.
that's the problem. There's no real pet job anymore. They're sort of like glorified GCDs.
Yeah, it's all just GCDs off onto the side. It's not. They're just getting rid of pet AI completely, which sucks. It would be kind of cool to see it in there, but
it would be cool if they fixed pet AI. Yeah, because the pet AI was rough.
Yeah, I mean Scholar pet AI was as good as it's been in the end of Stormblood, and it's really sad they went backwards on that again.
Mm-hmm.
Where you could control the fairy while doing GCDs.
Yeah.
I mean, once upon a time, you could use pets to soak mechanics. You could soak stacks with pets.
I remember
good old days.
Ramu tank.
No, don't bring it. Don't bring it.
With no vault stacks, you just keep Ramu.
Tankless Ramu was the worst.
The whole time.
Oh my god.
It was the worst thing. I was like, yay, new extreme fight. I'm going to go in here. Oh, yeah, cool. I don't think it exists anymore. I remember the days. Okay, yeah, I don't really know. It's hard. I mean, they have Soldier. They got like Onion Knight. I guess you could figure that out. They could make something work, but I just really don't know what kind of concepts they have left. Maybe they can make an original Final Fantasy XIV job. I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm still waiting for Blitzball player.
Ooh.
Oh no.
Blitzball. There you go.
Yeah.
So instead of making the game mode, he's just like, screw it. We're just going to bring it as a job.
That's the guy that throws the Blitzball at people for his attacks.
I guess so.
Imagine the
Isn't
RP
that
macros.
Is that rage though?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
Depends how good you are at kicking the ball, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we have a couple of questions here that came in. We could go over some of these questions here. Sierra Esther asked a question. I'm not sure if this means something to one of you. If you die as a ninja, should you scream "vouch for me" to your girlfriend who is also in the party?
Next question. Next question.
Is that a thing? You know,
They were
You don't
saying
want to go there.
Twitch
You don't want
clip
to go there.
recently. Just
okay.
I don't think you want to go there.
it was just
Okay.
someone that supposedly doesn't mess up mechanics.
Okay,
Supposedly.
that's fine. You
Mhm.
know, let's go into this next question. Let's see. I just gotta read it real quick to make sure it's good. Uh, okay. What is your favorite Savage fight this tier as melee, and what job do you actually enjoy it the most on?
That's a hard
I'm
one.
gonna rule out 9 for any of us. I think.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think it's cool, but I wouldn't do it in PF on Ninja or any melee for that matter.
Dude, don't do it in PF. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what job
Yeah,
you're playing on.
I really like 12, and followed closely by 11. Those are my top 2.
12, the door boss or the final boss?
Oh, I guess. I mean, shoot. I mean, I like the whole phase 1 and 2 of 12, but I guess it would be. Let's see. Top 3: phase 1, 12, then 11, and then phase 2, 12.
Okay.
Okay. Zeph, do you have an opinion on this?
Well, it might surprise you, but the way that I consider how good a fight, how at least for me, how enjoyable a fight is long term on melee, if I'm doing it a lot, is how difficult it is to play well, which in this case would be 9. The other ones are like, if you think about, so 12, I would say 12 door boss is my favorite fight for the tier.
Mhm.
But if we're talking specifically melee, like the door boss, that's sort of a colored opinion. Like I'm biased because I like the fight. But if I'm thinking
Mhm.
about how much fun I'll have doing it on melee and trying to improve and get better, I think 9 is the one that offers the most replay value in terms of trying to just get good at that fight.
Okay.
So I think that would be my favorite. As painful as it can be, I would probably have the most fun redoing that fight, trying to get good at just doing that fight.
Now, I'm gonna just throw it out there. I would enjoy 9 if the griefing didn't wipe the group.
Yeah.
Right? If it was just like one person died, haha, got him. You know, that'd be
but
fun. But
that's a fight general thing. Just like 12,
yeah,
the Doorboss opinion is a fight general thing, not a melee specific thing.
it's true.
See,
It's true.
for melee, I would say either 11 or Oracle, second part of 12.
Okay.
Because 11's the one where you have to adapt the most to the boss turning generally. 'cause
He
you
does
can't-
turn a lot on his
Oh
own.
my god. Yeah. There is that.
So you have to like really think ahead of like where you would want True North over other things.
I would
and,
probably
like-
put 11 in a close second then.
And then 12, the Oracle, I just think that keeping uptime for those is a lot of fun, especially when you get to like the dual APOC, triple APOC.
It's a little more straightforward though, wouldn't you say? Like it's just a matter of figuring out your rotation around the downtime and making sure you get back to the boss. Whereas
But the thing is, there is no downtime on that if you do it right.
Oh,
yeah, well,
literally
that's
zero
what I
downtime.
mean. Like that's what I mean. Like once you've figured it out, like it's a little
Yeah.
more straightforward than trying to figure out positionals and greeting GCDs around. I don't. What's the mechanic called? I want to call it hibachi because that's what we call
Hibachi.
it.
Yeah. Hibachi.
Burnt
Yeah,
strike.
that's what we call it. Yeah, burnt strike.
Burnt
Yeah,
strike,
like
yeah.
getting your GCDs on burnt strike and things like that, and
Yeah.
your positionals. Like that's
I
a little
think-
bit more involved and a little less exact, I would say, compared to Phase 2 Oracle of Darkness.
I agree in that. I just really like Oracle just because of the fact that you can change the strats to get full uptime, but it's just really tight, so it's just very fun when you actually like get it done correctly.
Yeah, something
It's
like,
like-
that. I
Because like
agree.
for
Feels really
triple,
good.
for triple APOC, when you get the knockback, that snapshot's the instant you get knocked back. So if you Shikuchi something like that instantly, you don't get hit.
Yeah,
by the
things like that. are
A-Time
satisfying.
AoE under her. So stuff like that, where I feel like that's the fight that has the most of that.
True, a bunch of knockbacks. That is true. It does have that.
okay.
Whereas like the only reason I would ever say 9 like you did is just because anti-air and wide angle has some uptime stuff, but like the rest of it isn't all that big for me. but that's also because I have already done most of that from the speedruns that we've done. So
Okay. I don't understand this question. I don't know if you just get memed on all the time, Zheph. It's just a number 2 and a question mark. Is that something that
Oh,
is familiar to you
2?
at all? Yeah.
It is, but
Do you just get memed on all day? Is that what this is?
it's just a text-to-speech meme. Move on.
Okay.
Next.
Okay.
Oh,
All right. So here's the next one for you, Zheph. How responsible do you feel for Happy Brambles?
0. I was not in favor of it during prog.
Oh, really?
In favor of it. No, I didn't like it. I still don't like it.
Okay. Okay. What's so wrong about Happy Brambles? Like, is there anything like I don't really care from a clear standpoint.
One, they get in the way, and 2, oh man, that last question is now coming back to haunt me. Never mind. It's not very compatible with the uptime anti-air. So Rin's uptime strat for anti-air. The Brambles are kind of. I mean, I don't know if you could get into your spots in time with that strat, but it would be a lot more difficult. You kind of want to open up the Cardinals a little bit more, so you can do like the thing is. People say, I mean, Happy Brambles has merits. Like it's pretty straightforward to execute. It keeps everyone pretty close together. I'm trying to remember where I was going with this.
I don't
right,
know.
Yeah, I remember. So the G-City, like there's sort of a perception that you gain G-Cities doing Happy Brambles, but then you have to do a downtime anti-air strat. So anything you gained in that moment has just been lost on the next mechanic. And so people will usually do a comparison between Bramble strats just within themselves. Like how good is this Bramble strat versus another without considering how it affects the follow-up mechanics. And it's the way that Happy Brambles affects everything else that causes problems because they get in the way. And then also when you have the, what is it, second and third art of something, or I forget the name of the mechanics, but when you have to do a half room, like especially in the later portion of the fight when you have to do a half room dodge and then move into either a stack or a spread, which should be boss relative, mind you, not true north, because
right.
why would you send a melee to the front of the boss? But anyway, sometimes people will put those Brambles, some of them will be really close to the boss, and someone has a really tight spot to do a spread for that mechanic, or even on the second art, when the boss is pulled middle, if the boss positioning is not perfect, they might leave it like halfway and the Brambles will be right on top of someone's spot, and that causes problems as well. So I think opening up the middle is generally just nicer. I think it's safer for prog, and it also means you can do more uptime strats on anti-air as well. So it's like if you're losing GCDs on Happy, or if you're gaining GCDs on Happy Brambles, you need to think about where you might be losing GCDs elsewhere.
You know, I need to ask Mike how he feels about having that strategy named after him. I don't know.
Pretty sure he doesn't like it either.
He said he hasn't been going into PF because it's weird joining parties that are named after him.
Yeah, I can understand that. All right. So, do you think melee, this is for all of you, do you think melee DPS rotations are too simple nowadays? And if yes, what would you change to make it more interesting?
I think some are.
I think
Samurai's too bad, but the rest are just kind of the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, the thing about Samurai is you have to count your GCDs mid-rotation. So there's something extra you're thinking about. And then you also have like mid-rotation bursts with Midares and doing Hagakure and spending your Kenki on Shintens or what have you. I think the other melees could probably benefit from that, just having more mid-rotation interest, which is one of the things I'm sad about with Monk in the transition from Stormblood to Shadowbringers, at least I mean, I could go on about TK rotation monk, but in particular, I miss internal release, the 60-second crit buff, which was a separate alignment buff that monk had that gave them a mini burst window every minute and would also align with their 90s every 60 seconds. It was just an extra thing to think about. So now monk is still very fast paced. Like you have to think a lot about your positionals, but once you get comfortable with that and you know, like, because the fights are scripted, you sort of learn the script for the fight. You have your GCDs mapped out. You're always at this spot, at this part of the fight. You're always hitting that GCD. From that point on, you have something like you have 75 seconds of relative nothingness in between your burst windows, and that's sort of what internal release used to fill. And then also the tornado kicks back then. You had because you got to do a tornado kick every 30 seconds as well, which was another mini burst. So I think it's important to have those mid-rotation interesting parts just to keep you engaged. Like, even if it's not a full burst. And that would also sort of play into the idea that was brought up earlier about Monk being a more stable DPS, like something that just has a higher bottom line overall. Like maybe less bursty, higher, but a higher bottom line of how much DPS they're constantly outputting.
All right, I saw someone talking shit about Mario Kart. Don't talk shit about Mario Kart. All right, Llama, go ahead. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean that would be a nice addition. I mean, for at least with ninja, it's just like you got your burst every 60 seconds, and in between, you're just don't overcap Ninki, don't overcap your ninjutsu. You're just waiting for that next trick. So yeah, just something in between to kind of help this out. It'd be fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want it to go back as far as, well, I mean, I wanted to, but I know it will never go back that far. Back to 5.08 Ninja, where there was like 10 people that actually was able to consistently play at the highest level, because there was so much you had to think about the entire time that like it was so hard that they will never ever go back to that.
The extra charge of Kasatsu and everything else. Yeah, it was a lot.
Like,
there was 6 double weaves in your opener.
It was so hard, and like I think when me and Xiaofu, who was the person that helped us that helped me make the rotation, we spent literally like 25 hours that first week trying to find something that actually was consistent.
Oh, man.
And like just like moving different things around, like it was, and like it got to the point that you had to be GCD perfect, and you could not have more than like 50 ping, or it was just not possible.
Cool. Oh well.
Well, you don't have 50 ping in Japan, so it's
Yeah.
I don't even have 50 ping.
And like
yeah.
so like what they
500
did
minimum.
like what they did for Ninja especially, I think was good. I just wish they could find a in between.
Would you like your poisons back?
I don't care for the
Yeah,
poison.
I mean something I would like them to bring back with Ninja is the delicate balance between. I mean, I don't know how they would bring it back now with the current Mudra system, but the balance between Fuma Shuriken and Raiton, where Fuma was higher because it didn't clip your GCD when you used it, but Raiton was better if you were forced off the boss.
And the thing is, we still kind of have that right now, but that we have that with Doton and Raiton instead.
Yeah, true.
It's just
if you
heavily
can
favored
get,
in Raiton.
Yeah.
Todd, you gonna let them talk about Ninja and not jump in on that?
Oh no. I'm chiming in.
No, I'm trying to give you shit.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at there's a couple questions in here, but we've already answered a lot of them, so I'm gonna throughout the show we've answered them. But this is one that is saying, do you think Dragoon could use a personal mitigation such as Third Eye, Riddle of Viper, Shade Shift?
I think that they could definitely use it.
But would you want them to have it, I guess? Is that just one of the flaws that they should accept as playing that job, or is it something that they need?
I think that they should change other things rather than change that, because that's going back into the whole homogenization where everything should be able to do everything.
That's what I would have said. The question is, do you want to just make everyone do the same thing? Because that's sort of where tanks are at the moment, where they all for the most part, can handle everything the same way, and there's not really there aren't too many pros and cons between tanks. I mean, there are pros and cons, but not in such a big way as it used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Well, there's some other questions in here. One is, are you guys going to help me clear E9S? And we're not going to answer that one because I'm just gonna Party Finder it up sometime and not tell anybody, and just kind of secret my way through Party Finder. No, I'll probably do it on Monday or something. Just let you know, it will be at 6 o'clock. 5 o'clock.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
All right. Wink, wink. We may or may not be there.
Yeah, no. Just in case you see Party Finders pop up at that point, maybe. Let's see, and we did answer this, I believe. But it's more of just, Party Finder, you kind of stay in your own little bubble. They were asking when's the best time for Melee or any other role to use their buff windows. Is there any consideration that you can make in Party Finder with that? Because it was in reference to Party Finder.
Just on cooldown, I would say. You can't rely on people to use it properly, so you just want to get as many uses as you can in a run.
Mhm.
It's a free for all. Don't try to align anything. Just do you.
Generally, if you just use your things on cooldown, that's going to do more DPS than anything else weird you can do.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the best
Especially
things
since
to
you
do.
don't have like a set kill time for Party Finder or anything. Like it's impossible for you to truly optimize with moving stuff around other than just use it on cooldown.
And you just have to hope if the other players are good, they're using their stuff on cooldown too, and it just kind of lines up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the
That's the hope.
openers that people, like, if people are learning their openers from the Balance or what other guide websites there are, those openers are designed around creating buff alignment in the opener. That's what they're for. And so generally, if you just follow that opener and then press your stuff on cooldown for the rest of the fight, it will play into what everyone else is doing if they're all also doing the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's most of the questions that we have here today, and we're almost at about 2 hours. Does it feel like we've been going for about 2 hours, guys?
Not really,
It
no.
went by pretty fast.
Yeah.
That's pretty quick.
I mean, we still have 2 more hours, right?
Oh shit, you're right. We got 2 more hours. I guess we could talk about more of what job has the best glamours.
I wouldn't know. I'm not the best person to ask about that.
I still think Ninja does, but
Yeah.
I have one glamour, and it's underwear
slime?
and a slime hat.
That's
That's like everyone with slime mat wants to do underwear. I don't understand.
I mean,
that
that
is
is
a club
the
or
best glamour.
something.
That is best in slot. That's best in slot glamour.
Okay. Any opinions on that, Todd? Do you have like a glamour that you work on, or you just not care?
I mean, I've used a couple of glamours, but I don't change that often. I think I like the that late Allegan PvP set. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool on Ninja.
Yeah.
that's
And
pretty
even
good,
tank.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, PvP, and not a lot of people have anything
That's
for PvP.
probably the only time I would do PvP.
Yeah.
That's, you know what, I'll take it. I don't know if you guys know my history of PvP at all, but I'll take it. I'll accept it. I'm hoping, PvP is going to change in the next expansion, and it's going to be a whole new life to it, and everything's going to be great. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's kind of sad that there's not much PvP of a scene in this game.
did you guys play PvP at any point as Melee?
I have tried it, but I've never done it with like an actual group, so I never really got into it too far.
Okay.
I've done it here and there, just not seriously.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah, nothing
guys.
organized.
So on the note of positivity with PvP is going to be better, 2021, let's just be positive about shit, man. Everything's going to be good, right? We're just going to, everybody's going to try their best. If things don't work out how we hope, we can hope for it. If it doesn't happen, you know what? They tried their best, I'm sure. Okay? We got to be, we're trying to recover from the worst year of most people's life. So we're trying to go into a good year here. So Square Enix is going to fix the gearing stuff for Melee. Things are probably going to stay balanced, right? Things are going to be great going into. We're going to have an expansion this year, surely.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Announced.
great. What'd you
And
say,
Fan
Seth?
Fest is going to come back.
Announced
Yeah.
release. So, do we really think it's going to come out this year? Unless you're
think it
just going along with the positivity thing.
Yes, I do think
I
it's going to
think
be
it
out this
will
year.
either way.
Yeah, no matter what,
Okay.
it's going to be out. I don't know about
I wonder-
16, but I do know that the expansion will be out this year.
Yeah, but the expansion will probably be, I would guess, sometime in winter.
I don't know if it's going to be all the way in winter. I think it might be in fall.
Well, we've
in a
got the
positive way.
Ultimate
Because the thing is, they still have 5.5 left. Then they have potentially a 5.55, like they always do.
Yeah.
So that's like 6 months at least.
Yeah.
So we're going to have another.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I'm expecting 5.5 in like March. Is my goal, like early March, and then if you add 6 months,
It's going to be late April. I think he said April.
there's no way
17
it's
weeks
going to be
on
April.
from. You don't think
No.
so?
No.
Apparently,
Uh,
precedent is apparently 17 weeks on from. This is secondhand knowledge, so I don't know for sure, but apparently 17 weeks on from the Savage tier. I think that's what was said, which puts it in April.
We'll see.
That puts it like mid-April, doesn't it?
If it's in mid-April and you add 6 months to it, we're expecting an October release of the expansion.
Man, it's a long tier again. All right.
Yeah, it's going to
But
be.
we do have an
still
ultimate
going to be
coming,
shorter
which-
probably
This
than the
is
last
true.
year.
Yeah.
We'll have an ultimate. We will have an ultimate.
We'll have Ultimate. We'll also be getting more Bosha stuff soon, won't we?
Yeah, we're going to have
Yeah,
Savage
for
Bosa,
the
which
normal and Savage. Yeah.
no clue
Yeah.
what that's
I'm
going to look
looking
like.
forward to that.
No clue. Like, I don't want to like do any world race tracking for it. I'll keep it in the back of my head because it could just be an extreme, right? It could be just a 24 man extreme.
Yeah,
Well, if
that's
it's-
true.
If it's like Baldessi and Arsenal, it was more like the world race was more like a friendly region v region competition. Like it wasn't, people weren't really taking it seriously. It wasn't like, oh, we have to beat X or Y region. It was just sort of like, I remember watching on Twitch, the Japanese would get to the final boss, and then everyone would just go onto the Japanese streams and cheer them on, and then they would wipe, and then everyone would pile onto the NA streams, and everyone would cheer them on. And it was sort of like this friendly back and forth competition. It wasn't too serious, and I actually quite enjoyed watching that.
It's going to be more
Yeah.
serious this time.
Probably.
So say
Yeah,
if
quite
announced,
possibly, yeah. Now that we know what the last one was like, because we sort of didn't know what we were getting with Baldessi and Arsenal at the time until it was upon us.
Yeah, this is a structured 40. Is it 48 man for Savage?
I think
right?
it's 48, yeah.
So, yeah.
And
Yeah.
24 for normal, isn't it?
Yeah, and so people can plan for this, right? So people are
Yeah,
going to
true.
plan groups and try to see what they can do. There are going to be only a handful of groups out there planning it, but there's going to be a handful of serious groups trying to clear it first.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, if you have a really hardcore organized group going into a 48-man Savage, what does that look like? Does it look like a difficulty of what Extreme is? They clear it in 2 hours and it's done? Or is it, it takes days? There's no way to predict it at this
Well,
point.
Baldessi and Arsenal took, I can't remember, was it at least 2 days? It was day 2 at least.
We had to
I
level
can't
up too,
remember
right?
How long beyond that? Yeah.
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 But like it did take a long time to prog because there were a lot of hidden puzzles, puzzle mechanics that had to be solved, like for the dungeon as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And if people are more organized going into it, then it may go by more quickly, especially if you don't have to worry about instance fishing and
Yeah.
like getting everyone in and that sort of thing. Like if you can just go in with a group where everyone is on the same page, if Baldessi and Arsenal came out again and we just pretend we didn't know anything about it, it would probably get cleared a lot faster because people would be better organized.
Yeah.
So it probably will get cleared, probably within the day, I would say.
Yeah.
Within
Which,
half a day, maybe.
I mean, that's still world race trackable, but like, my fear would be the 2 hour thing and just there not being a lot of stuff out there that's,
Yeah.
it would make it too great. That being said, we're gonna do 2 hours, but we're done with Melee. We're just gonna start talking about all the other shit coming up. Right?
That's fun.
But yeah, no, I appreciate everybody coming on. You guys have been amazing for a Melee show. It's been a while. I wanted to wait a little bit and let all the kind of Melee stuff sink in and the World Race stuff to kind of calm down for me so I can have a good spot. And this has been an excellent show. You guys did fantastic. Surprised me. I thought it was going to be shit.
Wow.
Good night.
I'm just,
Yeah,
I'm
we're
kidding.
trying our best.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Llama, Sheen, it's your first time coming on. You both did fantastic here.
Thank you.
You know, it means a lot. And Zeph, I'm glad I brought you back. I had my doubts at first, but you know, you came back on. And I do want to personally thank you again, Zeph. This is just my own little thing. It's you know, for the world race stuff when we were doing that, everybody kind of getting and letting us see those point of views, because we did use those point of views a lot on the stream. So thank you for
That's
that
good
too.
I didn't get to watch, obviously, because I was
Obviously.
in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good you got to use it.
Yeah. And with that being said, I would like all of you to have your last words, anything that you would like to say to people out there in the world, and where people can find you and everything else. And I'm going to do the same thing clockwise, so that means, Sheen, you'd go first.
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter, on Discord, like at Sotactin.
Why is your name completely different?
Because I used Sotactin way back in the day for stuff, and I just never changed it because it was just normal. That was like my profile name for everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started MMOs, I just wanted a name that was more of an actual name, not just kind of like a random thing.
Okay. That makes sense.
So-
Okay. So, and that's, and you do streaming, actually. You do have some streaming.
Yeah, I
Sick.
stream mostly. I'll just stream raids. I don't really stream much outside of that, but sometimes I will stream, like back when I was doing dungeon speedruns with Svi, stuff like that. But I just kind of stream whatever when I feel like it. It's not anything set in stone.
I'm going to get it eventually. Hold on. There we go. I got it.
It's like Sheenda, Shania, Zotactin,
Yeah.
Shotactin.
This happens every time.
And did you say, sorry, I was busy trying to figure out how to type that. Did you do any shout outs to anyone?
I did not, but I'd like to thank you, Momo, for recommending me. I heard,
Mm-hmm.
and for everyone in general for just being nice and actually like helping me out when I have questions in whatever Discourse I'm in and all that kind of stuff. Because I still learn from other people.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, too, is that everybody's always learning, right? It doesn't really stop. All right, Llama, would you like to go?
Sure. Well, you can find me on Twitch, /Llamatodd, and Twitter @Llamatodd. I usually
So easy.
stream. I know. I stream late in the evenings, Degen hours. If you're looking to try to step into Savage content, I got you covered. And I'd like to first off just give a shout out to my wife, Mrs. Llama, who's been like my biggest supporter, helping me out, and to the friends I've made this year recently with Rin and Darian and Comey, all great people, and of course my raid team on Primal with Leon Dragneel and the gang. We've taken out a bunch of ultimates and went through the tier, so it's been a good one. So thank you all. Mm-hmm.
I think it was Leon that actually was like, "Hey, you need to check out Llama. Look at Llama's stuff." I try to at some point. I don't remember if it was him or someone else. It was a while back, actually. Anyways, Zeph.
Oh well, yeah, you can find my Twitch at, well, I'll put it in chat.
Okay.
Zeph Zayora, and my Twitter is at ZephZ, so it's just cut out the end of the surname.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I stream a lot. Some would say, and I do speedruns. Well, I will when I get gear. And I like working on strat diagrams. I try and come up with stuff that I think will be good for PFs and also good for uptime. I try and find a good balance. And so you can find my diagrams on Twitter. I usually put stuff on there. And I just want to give a shout out to my raid team, Oversleepers, because they are a joy to play with, and I hope we get to continue playing together for a long time. You guys are great.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully they don't kick you out or anything. That'd suck. That'd be embarrassing.
They're just scheming behind my back. They're already like, oh, that Zheph guy, we need to get rid of him.
But yeah, thank you all for coming on. You've been a blast again. Just my quick little fast bits here to end the show. We are doing a MogTalk next weekend. It is the donation incentive. That was the end of the charity event for the Glamour episode, where I am required to wear a Makote outfit and makeup. So
Nice. Oh my god.
I'm excited for that.
yeah, that will be the final bit of the donation incentives that I will be fulfilling. So
Can we get you on the front page somehow?
I don't think so. I don't think so. But no, the costume came in a little bit earlier than I thought, and so we're gonna bring on some people to talk about glamour while wearing cat ears and stuff. So if you guys want to see that, please be here next week. It'll be at the exact same time, 2 p.m. PST, 5 p.m. EST, 10 p.m. GST, and I think it's maybe 7 a.m. if you're in Japan for some reason and you're watching this. I don't know. I've been going through time zones so much. I can't keep track of it anymore. That also being said, thank you very much to the chat, everybody that came in. Thank you very much to my wife, Kiara, who puts up with my bullshit. To go back to Llama's point there, it is always important to thank the people that are around in your life while you're doing streaming, because that does affect everybody, and she puts up with it pretty well. So thank you very much, Karar, for that. And then thank you, Andre Kane, for the intro and the closing music that I used for the show. And yeah, everybody, thank you guys so much. We will be back later, and we're going to do a host here. I do have one little video for you guys to watch at the end of the stream. This is for everyone who supports on Patreon and everything else. But until next time, remember, be good, keep cool. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Wave. You gotta say wave. Llama, you gotta wave with me. You're the only one there.
I'm also waiting.
Oh, hey guys. Thank you guys for watching the episode. I'm not actually going to play this guitar. I'm just holding it here. I don't really know how to play it, but I figured I don't really have a lot more to go on with props and things to do for these after video Patreon things, but why not? Why not just have a guitar here and make it look like I'm going to play a guitar? I figured you guys would appreciate that a lot. But, you know, who I do appreciate, I absolutely appreciate the people who support the show by doing their Patreon support. The only reason you're seeing this video is because they do support the show so much. And so let me go ahead and name them out. Dude, it's Antonio, great friend of the channel that has done a lot of moderation and a lot of other things to help the channel grow. There's Super Miyu, who works with the Teamcraft website. Awesome website if you're into crafting at all. Then there's Nimic, who runs the Ock Morning website. You guys should definitely check that out if you are looking to get more information on rating. And then, of course, there is Tag, who also supports at this tier, who has done a lot with moderation and with the World Race event and other things. So, this video is purely here because they support at such a high level. It's an incentive. You guys have no reason to support as much as they do. But, of course, I am a man of my word, so that's why I'm doing this video. I would like to say thank you to everyone who has supported the show. I know it's been kind of crazy coming back and trying to figure out all the ins and outs of everything. Next week we have a very interesting show that I hope you all tune in for. That was a part of the donation incentive. I would also like to say, donation incentive from the World Race. I would also like to say we did raise an extra $1,200 through Twitch revenue that we donated just yesterday to Child's Play. So that is over now. Thank you everybody who helped support that. And until, next time, be good, keep cool, stay frosty.